Solitude is often misunderstood. Society tends to equate being alone with being lonely, as though our worth is tied to the number of people around us. But true strength doesn't come from how many people are in your corner, it comes from how steady you are when no one is. When a woman chooses solitude, she isn't retreating from the world, she's stepping into herself. Solitude allows her to disconnect from the noise, the expectations, and the opinions that can cloud her mind. In that quiet space, she learns to listen to her inner voice, to trust her instincts, and to reconnect with what truly matters. Solitude is where she builds resilience. It's where she faces her fears, confronts her doubts, and emerges stronger. Without the distractions of external validation or constant comparison, she's free to explore her thoughts and emotions deeply. This process is not easy. It requires courage to sit with oneself, to acknowledge weaknesses, and to embrace vulnerability. But it is in this raw honesty that she discovers her power. In solitude, she finds clarity. Decisions become easier because they're no longer influenced by the noise of others. Her goals become sharper because she's no longer chasing what society tells her she should want. She's not afraid of being alone because she knows that it's in those moments of stillness that the most profound growth happens. Solitude is also a sanctuary, a space where she can recharge and protect her energy. In a world that constantly demands her attention, being alone is her way of reclaiming her time and her focus. It's where she learns to be her own source of strength, joy, and fulfillment. This strength isn't just about enduring, it's about thriving. Solitude is not a void, it's a foundation. It's the fertile ground where she plants the seeds of her dreams, cultivates her talents, and builds the life she wants. When she steps out into the world, she does so from a place of power, knowing she doesn't need anyone to complete her. Confidence is not something you inherit from the outside world, it's built deep within, layer by layer through experiences, challenges, and self-discovery. It doesn't depend on compliments, applause, or the approval of others. True confidence is unshakable because it is rooted in a foundation that no one else can touch. This kind of confidence begins when a woman understands her value is intrinsic. It's not tied to her appearance, her job title, or her social circle. It comes from knowing who she is at her core, the strengths she brings, the principles she upholds, and the unique qualities that make her irreplaceable. She doesn't need external validation to affirm her worth because she has already validated herself. Unshakable confidence isn't built overnight, it's forged in moments of struggle. It comes from falling down, learning how to stand back up, and realizing she can overcome anything. Every failure becomes a lesson, every setback a stepping stone. Each challenge she faces adds to the quiet, steady belief that she can handle whatever life throws her way. This belief doesn't waver because it's been tested and it's proven. Her confidence is further strengthened by self-awareness. She knows her strengths and embraces her imperfections. She doesn't shy away from her flaws or try to hide them. Instead, she sees them as opportunities for growth. This self-acceptance creates an inner calm that shields her from the judgment and opinions of others. When she walks into a room, her presence speaks for itself, not because she's the loudest, but because her energy radiates assurance. Unshakable confidence also comes from taking ownership of her life. She doesn't wait for someone else to lead her or tell her what to do. She sets her own goals, creates her own opportunities, and makes decisions with conviction. She trusts her instincts and her ability to navigate any situation. This independence isn't born out of arrogance, but from the quiet understanding that she's capable and resourceful. It's important to note that this type of confidence doesn't rely on being perfect. It doesn't demand that she has all the answers or that she never doubts herself. Instead, it's about having faith in her ability to figure things out. Even when she feels uncertain, she knows she has the strength to keep moving forward. That self-belief becomes a constant and anchor she can rely on no matter how stormy the seas around her become. Her confidence grows even stronger through discipline and action. Every time she steps outside her comfort zone, every time she achieves something she once thought impossible, she adds another layer to her foundation. Each small victory reminds her of her potential, and each risk she takes reinforces her courage. She doesn't need to tell the world about her accomplishments, she feels them in her bones. This confidence also allows her to celebrate others without feeling diminished. She doesn't compare herself to anyone else because she's focused on her own journey. She knows that her path is unique, and she's not in competition with anyone. This freedom from comparison is what makes her confidence so resilient. It's not built on being better than someone else, it's built on being true to herself. Time is the one resource that can never be replenished, and energy is the force that drives everything we do. Together, they form the currency of life, and a woman who understands their value knows that every moment and every ounce of her energy must be spent with intention. She recognizes that her time and energy are not infinite, and that how she chooses to allocate them defines the quality of her life. When a woman truly values her time, she becomes deeply selective about how she spends it and with whom. She knows that every minute wasted on meaningless chatter, unnecessary drama, or unproductive distractions is a minute she can never get back. This understanding forces her to reevaluate her priorities. She stops saying yes to everything and everyone and starts focusing on the things that matter most: her growth, her peace, her goals. Energy is equally sacred. It's not just physical stamina, it's mental clarity, emotional balance, and spiritual vitality. She knows that her energy is finite, and once it's depleted, it takes effort to restore. That's why she guards it so fiercely. She avoids situations, people, and habits that drain her. Gossip, negativity, and conflict are no longer welcome in her space. Instead, she seeks out environments and relationships that uplift and energize her. This mindset requires her to set boundaries, and setting boundaries takes courage. It's not always easy to say no, especially when the world expects women to be endlessly accommodating. But a woman who values her time and energy knows that saying no to one thing is saying yes to something more important. She's not afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align with her vision for her life. She also understands the importance of rest and recovery. Society glorifies being busy, but she knows that constantly running on empty is a recipe for burnout. She doesn't feel guilty for taking time to recharge because she knows it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Whether it's through quiet reflection, spending time in nature, or simply doing nothing for a while, she protects her energy by prioritizing self-care. This woman is also deliberate about how she invests her time in her goals and passions. She knows that success doesn't come from wishing or waiting, it comes from consistent effort. But that effort must be focused. She's learned to distinguish between what's urgent and what's important, and she doesn't let the noise of the world distract her from her purpose. Every project she takes on, every opportunity she pursues is carefully chosen because she knows her energy is too valuable to be wasted on things that don't move her forward. Her relationships are no exception. She understands that not everyone deserves access to her time and energy. She's learned to recognize the difference between people who add value to her life and those who take without giving. This doesn't mean she's selfish, it means she's discerning. She gives generously to the people who matter, but she's no longer willing to sacrifice herself for those who don't appreciate her. By valuing her time and energy, she also becomes more present in the moment. She's not rushing through life trying to do everything at once. Instead, she slows down, focuses, and gives her full attention to whatever she's doing. Whether it's working on a passion project, spending time with loved ones, or simply enjoying a quiet moment, she's fully engaged because she knows that each moment is precious. This understanding transforms the way she views her life. She stops measuring her worth by how much she can accomplish in a day or how many people she can please. Instead, she measures it by how aligned she feels with her values and her purpose. Her time and energy are her greatest assets, and she spends them wisely, knowing they are the building blocks of a life well lived. Boundaries are not walls that shut people out. They are lines that define how you expect to be treated, how you value your time and energy, and ultimately how much you respect yourself. A woman who sets and enforces boundaries understands her worth deeply because she knows that without them, she risks losing herself to the demands and expectations of others. When a woman has strong boundaries, it's a reflection of her understanding that she is not here to please everyone. She knows that trying to meet everyone else's needs at the expense of her own is not an act of kindness, but of self-neglect. Boundaries are her way of protecting her emotional, mental, and physical well-being. They allow her to conserve her energy for the things and people that truly matter, rather than scattering it in all directions to keep others happy. Setting boundaries takes courage, especially in a world where people often view a woman's kindness as a sign of availability. It requires her to say no when her time, energy, or values are at stake, even if it disappoints someone else. This is not selfishness, it is self-preservation. She understands that every time she says yes to something that doesn't serve her, she is saying no to something that does. Boundaries are also a way of teaching others how to treat her. When she sets a limit and enforces it consistently, she's showing the world that she values herself and expects the same from others. If someone disregards her boundaries, she doesn't take it as a personal failure. Instead, she sees it as a clear signal that this person may not belong in her life. Maintaining boundaries is not about controlling others, it's about controlling what she allows into her space. This woman also knows that boundaries are not just for others, they're for herself as well. She sets limits on how much she can take on, how far she will push herself, and how often she will put others' needs ahead of her own. She recognizes the importance of self-discipline and self-respect. By honoring these internal boundaries, she ensures that she doesn't overextend herself or lose sight of her own goals and priorities. Boundaries, when implemented, become a filter that separates what nourishes her from what depletes her. They help her distinguish between relationships that are mutually supportive and those that are one-sided. She understands that people who truly care about her will respect her boundaries without question, while those who push against them reveal their lack of regard for her well-being. Enforcing boundaries requires her to embrace discomfort because not everyone will respond positively. There will be those who attempt to guilt her, criticize her, or manipulate her into bending her limits. But she doesn't waver. She knows that allowing someone to cross her boundaries once sets a precedent for them to do it again. She holds firm, not out of defiance, but out of a deep commitment to herself and her values. Boundaries also allow her to cultivate deeper, healthier relationships. They create clarity and mutual respect because both parties know what is expected and where the limits lie. When she communicates her boundaries, she's inviting others to meet her in a space of honesty and understanding. Those who rise to this challenge earn her trust, while those who don't simply fall away. This understanding of boundaries extends to every aspect of her life, her career, her friendships, her family, and even her relationship with herself. She knows that setting boundaries doesn't mean shutting people out, it means protecting her peace, her priorities, and her purpose. By doing so, she is able to give more freely and authentically to the people and pursuits that truly deserve her attention. Her boundaries are not rigid, they are flexible but firm, evolving as she grows and changes. They are a reflection of her self-awareness and her understanding of what she needs to thrive. Through her boundaries, she shows the world that she is not afraid to take up space, to protect her energy, and to demand the respect she knows she deserves. Boundaries are not just a tool for managing relationships, they are an expression of her self-worth, loud and clear. Not all relationships are created equal, and a woman who understands the value of her time and energy knows that it's not the number of connections she has, but the quality of those connections that truly matters. She recognizes that surrounding herself with the right people, those who uplift her, challenge her, and respect her is far more important than trying to maintain shallow relationships just to feel accepted. Being selective doesn't mean she's isolating herself, it means she's deliberate. She's careful about who she allows into her inner circle because she understands that the people closest to her have a profound impact on her thoughts, emotions, and overall well-being. She's not interested in filling her life with acquaintances who only show up when it's convenient for them. Instead, she seeks relationships that are built on trust, respect, and mutual support. This selectivity stems from her understanding of her own worth. She no longer feels the need to keep people in her life who drain her energy, belittle her dreams, or fail to celebrate her successes. She's learned to recognize the difference between someone who truly cares for her and someone who only stays around out of convenience or self-interest. When she identifies relationships that are one-sided or toxic, she's not afraid to let them go. Selective relationships are about alignment. She values people who share her vision for life, who respect her boundaries, and who inspire her to be her best self. These are the relationships that add meaning and richness to her journey. She knows that being surrounded by people who encourage her growth and challenge her to think bigger is far more rewarding than maintaining connections that hold her back. Quality relationships don't require constant validation or superficial exchanges. They are built on authenticity and understanding. She cherishes connections where she can be herself without fear of judgment, where vulnerability is met with compassion, and where her achievements are met with genuine joy. These relationships aren't based on how often they communicate or how many photos they post together. They are measured by the depth of connection and the value they bring to her life. Being selective also means she doesn't chase relationships. She knows that real connections are not forced, they flow naturally. She's not afraid to let go of people who aren't willing to meet her halfway. She understands that a relationship where only one person is investing effort is not a relationship, it's an obligation. And she refuses to carry the weight of relationships that don't serve her growth or happiness. This approach to relationships requires her to trust her intuition. She's learned to pay attention to how people make her feel and to listen to her inner voice when something doesn't feel right. If a relationship consistently leaves her feeling drained, anxious, or unappreciated, she knows it's a sign to reevaluate its place in her life. On the other hand, when she encounters people who genuinely add value to her life, she invests deeply in those connections. Selective relationships also mean she's willing to wait. She doesn't settle for relationships that don't align with her values just to avoid being alone. She knows that the right people will come into her life when the time is right. And she's willing to create space for those relationships by letting go of the wrong ones. This patience and discernment allow her to build a circle of people who truly matter. She also understands that quality relationships require effort, but the effort is mutual. She's willing to give her time, energy, and support to the people she cares about, but only when it's reciprocated. These are the relationships where both parties invest in each other's growth and happiness. There's no competition, no jealousy, just a shared desire to see each other thrive. By choosing quality over quantity, she creates an environment where she can flourish. Her relationships become a source of strength rather than stress, of inspiration rather than obligation. She's surrounded by people who respect her, value her, and believe in her. These connections add depth and meaning to her life, allowing her to focus her energy on what truly matters while letting go of what doesn't. True leadership is not about commanding others, it's about mastering oneself first. A woman who aspires to lead must begin with the most challenging and rewarding journey of all, the journey inward. She understands that before she can guide, inspire, or influence anyone else, she must first take control of her own mind, emotions, and actions. Self-mastery is the foundation of leadership because it creates the clarity, resilience, and authenticity that others naturally gravitate toward. Self-mastery begins with self-awareness. It's the ability to take an honest look at oneself and recognize both strengths and weaknesses without judgment. A woman who seeks to lead knows that denying her flaws only holds her back. Instead, she embraces them as opportunities for growth. She doesn't shy away from her insecurities or mistakes. She confronts them head on because she knows that growth only happens when she's willing to do the inner work. This inner work involves cultivating discipline. Leadership isn't about acting when it's convenient or easy, it's about showing up consistently, even when motivation wanes. A woman with self-mastery holds herself accountable to her commitments, her values, and her goals. She understands that discipline is not a restriction, but a pathway to freedom. It allows her to stay focused, make progress, and earn the respect of those around her. Emotional intelligence is another cornerstone of self-mastery. She knows that leadership isn't just about making logical decisions, it's also about managing emotions, both her own and others. This requires her to develop emotional regulation, the ability to stay calm and composed in the face of challenges. She doesn't react impulsively or let her emotions control her actions. Instead, she responds thoughtfully with a clear mind and an open heart. Self-mastery also means taking full ownership of her life. She doesn't blame circumstances, people, or external factors for her failures. Instead, she takes responsibility for her choices and their outcomes. This mindset empowers her to learn from every experience, whether it's a success or a setback. She knows that by owning her life, she gains the ability to shape it. This accountability inspires trust and respect in those she leads. Leadership requires vision, and vision comes from self-mastery. A woman who has taken the time to understand herself knows what she stands for, what she wants, and why it matters. She's not easily swayed by trends or external pressures because her decisions are rooted in her values and purpose. This clarity of vision allows her to inspire others to believe in her mission because they see that it comes from a place of authenticity and conviction. Another aspect of self-mastery is resilience, the ability to face challenges with courage and determination. Leadership is never without obstacles, but a woman who has mastered herself doesn't crumble under pressure. She sees adversity as a teacher, a chance to become stronger and more resourceful. Her resilience comes from within, from her belief in her ability to overcome whatever comes her way. This inner strength becomes a beacon for those who look to her for guidance. Self-mastery also involves humility. A woman who leads herself first understands that she doesn't have all the answers. She's willing to learn, to admit when she's wrong, and to seek wisdom from others. This humility doesn't diminish her authority, it enhances it. It shows that she's secure enough in herself to value the perspectives and contributions of those around her. Finally, self-mastery is about authenticity. A woman who has mastered herself doesn't try to be someone she's not to gain approval or fit into a mold. She leads with her true self, and this authenticity is what draws others to her. People don't follow leaders because they're perfect. They follow leaders because they're real. By being genuine, she creates a sense of trust and connection that goes beyond titles or positions. Through self-mastery, she earns the right to lead not through force, but through example. Her actions, decisions, and demeanor reflect the kind of person she is, and this inspires others to rise to their own potential. Leadership is not a role she takes lightly, it's a responsibility she fulfills by first mastering herself. In doing so, she sets the standard for what leadership can and should be. True wholeness begins when a woman learns to find fulfillment within herself rather than seeking validation from the outside world. In a society that constantly measures worth by likes, followers, compliments, and external praise, being whole without validation is an act of profound self-liberation. It means breaking free from the need for approval and living in alignment with her own values, desires, and purpose. A woman who is whole without validation understands that her worth is inherent. It's not something that fluctuates based on how others perceive her. She doesn't tie her identity to external achievements, relationships, or opinions because she knows these things are fleeting and subject to change. Instead, she roots her sense of self in something far deeper, her character, her principles, and her unwavering belief in her own value. This sense of wholeness doesn't come overnight. It's cultivated through self-reflection and a willingness to confront the parts of herself that have been shaped by the need for validation. She begins to question why she sought approval in the past, whether it was to feel loved, accepted, or worthy. By examining these patterns, she gains clarity and starts to reclaim her power. Being whole without validation requires a woman to redefine success on her own terms. She no longer measures her life by society's standards or by comparisons to others. Instead, she asks herself what truly brings her joy and fulfillment. Success becomes about living authentically, pursuing her passions, and staying true to her own path, regardless of whether others understand or approve. This mindset frees her from the exhausting pursuit of perfection. She's no longer trying to fit into molds or live up to unrealistic expectations to gain praise. She embraces her flaws, knowing that they are part of what makes her unique and human. She doesn't strive to be liked by everyone because she understands that being authentic means some people won't resonate with her, and that's okay. When a woman stops seeking validation, she also begins to set stronger boundaries. She's no longer willing to sacrifice her needs, dreams, or values to gain someone else's approval. She learns to say no without guilt and to prioritize her well-being over pleasing others. This doesn't make her selfish, it makes her self-respecting. She understands that her worth is not determined by how much she can give to others at the expense of herself. Being whole without validation also means embracing solitude. She's not afraid to be alone with her thoughts, to sit in silence, or to enjoy her own company. She doesn't need constant affirmation or companionship to feel complete because she's found peace within herself. This ability to stand alone is a testament to her inner strength and independence. She also becomes less reactive to criticism and rejection. She doesn't internalize negativity or let it shake her sense of self. Instead, she views feedback as a tool for growth, choosing to accept what's constructive and let go of what's not. She understands that not everyone will see her value, and she's okay with that because she sees it herself. This wholeness doesn't make her closed off or unapproachable. On the contrary, it makes her relationships richer and more genuine. She no longer clings to others for validation, which allows her to show up fully and authentically in her connections. She gives freely, not because she needs something in return, but because she's already fulfilled. She also develops a sense of gratitude for her own journey. She doesn't compare her path to anyone else's because she understands that everyone's story is unique. She appreciates her experiences, both the highs and the lows, because they've shaped her into the person she is today. This gratitude deepens her sense of wholeness and allows her to move through life with confidence and peace. By being whole without validation, she takes control of her narrative. She's no longer waiting for the world to tell her she's enough. She declares it for herself. Her wholeness comes from knowing who she is, what she stands for, and what truly matters to her. And that kind of self-assurance is unshakable.